Hello everybody! Today we're jumping straight towards building the third section of this cathedral I've been working on over the last few episodes, which leaves us with just the fourth bit left on the very end there, as you can see, meaning that this massive project is almost done. The section I'm building today is another major bit of the building, including the towers, interiors and stuff like that, unlike the simple hall that we made in the previous episode. It's also the tallest section of the entire building, so you'll get a good idea of just how much this will impact the skyline of the city once it's done. Now, as I'm sure you've spotted early on, I'm sort of continuing the design of the interior details from the previous section through to this one as it was originally designed, but we're going to be going back through and making some edits to that today after all of the feedback I got from the previous episode. So I'll let you enjoy the rest of this build before we take a closer look. So for those of you who haven't caught up with this series so far, I am in fact using a schematic to construct this, as this was a build I wanted to make sure I designed up beforehand to make sure that I got it how I wanted it. However, even then I am still using it as more of a guide as I continue to make further edits to this thing, such as sort of hollowing out certain sections to make it easier to build for you guys, as well as adding some extra details which also includes some of the interior we're going to tackle just behind me. But before we get to that, why don't we take a spin of the exterior, as of course this is always my favourite part. Now I'm sure by now you can expect somewhat similar details as we've seen with the rest of this build. It's mostly following the same design, of course. However, there are a few features that are unique to this section that I really want to sort of go over. And one of those especially is this entrance here. This is the second and final entrance or exit into the cathedral. And this one actually points out towards this direction, which in the future theoretically should be where the harbour is. So you may be able to enter the city and then be greeted with an entrance this way, and also be greeted with an entrance that kind of leads you down the bridge that way. So I thought that was a nice way of kind of laying it out. And then on the other side, it's kind of a mirrored version without the door. And so on here we get all of the different materials used once again, such as the tuff and the different sort of andesite and stuff to create these nice patterns in here. But on this side we do in fact have an entrance. And so I've used the trapdoors to make big doors again. And up at the very top, if I fly on up here, you can see we have another very large circular glass window, similar to what we had on the facade. And so we've got this on either end. And then as you can see, we've got the big roof section that was made up as part of the hall before, and that is continued over to either end. It kind of corners off over to this side, where we're left with a balcony, which is pretty fancy. I think we'll take a closer look at this in a moment as we see how it leads into the interior. But in between the bit of roof, we do in fact have another tower. And so this is sort of an upgraded version of what we had here. It's a lot larger, and as I fly away, you can see that the entire thing is just a little bit bigger, especially up here on the roof. And so the way this is laid out is we have a bell room at the very bottom, which is part of a sort of proper interior room. And then as we get to the very top floor, this feels a little bit less like an interior room, even though it's connected, because it is in fact exposed to the outside, similar to how we didn't have any windows in these ones. And this one is open for all the bells to be heard. So this has some smaller bells in it, which you can in fact ring, which I really like. And this is, you can see again, using the nice design of dark oak up here, but we also have a little bit of oak log up here this time, as we do have the room for it. And I've used the trapdoors on the sides. Over here I had to sink one in because I wanted the back of this to be built up. And so yeah, that's what I went for in here. I've even got a little candle, and the button represents a bit of it melting off there. But otherwise, that pretty much does it for the exterior. We've already seen a lot of these details, such as the skulls for those details, and all of the different trapdoors to just add that extra bit of detail on the side. So now I want to show you how this thing connects on up over on the inside. This is one of my favorite parts. There's a lot of fun little details here. So first of all, we've got this little pun to the Discord server. For those of you who are on the Discord, you'll know exactly what this means. And this is a little grave or a tomb for somebody who may have been important. In this case, something very, very important. And up here, I do have room for either a painting or some kind of map art. I haven't decided yet. And up here, we also have some banners. These could be changed to something as well. So I want to hear what your ideas are on what these could be. And then over here, we have an extension of the interior. We're going to be tackling this a little bit later on. But otherwise, in the floor, I continued. Yes, these are the blast furnaces that I used for the floor. They're pretty expensive, but if you've got an iron, it does create a really nice texture. And here I've started experimenting around with some floor patterns, as we kind of decided we're not going to be doing the ceiling paintings as it's not so accurate for this time. But as for the floor, I think we could create some really nice patterns. So what I've done here, I believe, is use furnaces, and then these are my trapdoors, and this is the polished basalt pillar, I believe, and it makes for a pretty nice look. And then if you're wondering what all of this is up here, this is unfinished and will make a lot more sense once you see the rest of it being built. But you can see that it's kind of like a podium for what will one day be an area for the people to preach or whatever over on this bit. As I say, it will make more sense as it connects up later on, but you'll be able to access it through either side here on the left and the right. And in here you can even see I've started a little bit of the roof. So this will be sort of a short little room in here, which I'm thinking would be really cool to have a lot of candles, as it'd be nice to have a candle room. But I think I could even convert some of these side bits into something like that, maybe one of these bits in here. These still need a few more details added into it as it's looking a bit hollow. This time around I created a larger chandelier for this middle bit. So this is another candle chandelier which utilizes my candles, which are in fact magenta candles, which have a texture that remains the same even after you add more to it. So that creates lots of light and it still looks cool. And so it's basically a bigger version of the one I made before, and I think I like this one a lot more. I'm not sure if I should make them both this size or keep one small there and have a large one for this intersection. You can let me know what your thoughts are on that. But these are in fact dispensers, and then we've got the hopper down below which creates some nice details. Also above there to hang it down, and from up here you can also get a look at the stained glass windows from the inside, and you can see they're fairly detailed around these bits, but from below you can't see too much, and so I'm quite happy to just sort of leave it the way it is, a bit like what we did with the larger windows over here. Now whilst we're down here you can actually see that this little thing has in fact been completed and it's now looking very fancy. So I'll show you how this works. This is just a little spot you can climb up, kind of like a small staircase or a ladder. It doesn't really work, but if you have an elytra you can in fact fly on up. And yeah, so this is a cool little lookout. I'm not sure what this will get used for, but as you can see, I've got a dual purpose door here. So you can either close off this section or you can use it to close off this ladder. Now this is an alternative way of getting up to the interior on the very top floor. Now there is of course a second way of getting up here, or maybe a more sort of correct way, which is that through the attic that we made previously, you can in fact walk on through to get over to this side, but I thought that was a pretty fun detail, so I added it in, and this here is the interior of the main tower. Now as usual, I always tackle the interiors later on after hearing your ideas, so I'm just going to give you a spin of the different spaces we have here and what could potentially be done with them. So in the middle we have this massive round room, and at the moment I have a spiral staircase in the middle with all of this sort of structure going up on either side. This is pretty good. It looks quite cool as it comes on up into this bell room, but I think it uses up a lot of space. And so if we have any ideas for a specific interior, I think I may shove this into a corner somewhere so that we can actually build more in this area. But to either side, it extends over to the balconies. And so this here is supposed to represent a door. I really like the shape on the front. It doesn't look quite right on the back yet. There's not a lot I can do with this, but I may come up with something as I fix the interior. Maybe by making the door a little bit wider and creating a fake wall there or something. But I really like how it looks on the outside. And you do get met with some skulls as you come on out. But otherwise, this is the balcony once again, which we've seen here. And as we walk on through, you'll see that it's the same on that side. And then we also have a connection here for the final bit, which will probably look a little bit similar to what we had going on over here. And so once again, let's walk all the way up and I will show you the next room. This is the bell room, which we've already gotten a sneak peek of. So once again, I use my bells that I came up with for the bell towers over there, using the cauldrons and my trapdoors. I really love the shape this creates. And then in here, this is also technically an open room, and that's because you want to be able to hear those bells. And for now, as I say, I've done this staircase or spiral staircase in the middle, so I just have handrails all the way around. I don't know what else you think I should add on up here. You'll have to share your thoughts. But once again, I did another one of these ladders. So we also had this in the tower to save space, and it has the guardrails going around it just to make it look safe and a little bit more detailed. And this takes us up to where we were earlier on, over in the top of the bell tower. So the schematic with all of those changes and much more will all be available in the description. So that moves us on to the next thing here, which is starting to tackle some more of the interior details of this cathedral now that we've got future sections on, and it enables us to do that kind of thing. And the first thing I want to tackle today is the chairs or the benches inside that you're seeing right before you. Now, a lot of people brought up that in churches and cathedrals, it's more common to see benches or pews as they're known, as opposed to the chairs that I've got set up at the moment. I did actually consider this when I first built it. However, I kind of settled with this for some reason, and I've now decided that I do in fact want to go back to the kind of pew design. And there's really two main changes that we want to make here. we want to replace the chairs with benches, and we also want to create a center aisle, as that was another common request. So I think we should start off here by just tearing down these ones in the middle. Now that I'm looking at this space that we've created, I do actually think it could be a really fun idea to do some kind of work in the floor design along the center where the aisle is, dividing off where the chairs will be and things like that, but I'll probably tackle that in a bit. For now, I want to get these benches in, and so I have two main sort of ideas when it comes to this. Now, of course, I'm sure you've seen a lot of benches before, which kind of look a little bit like this. You get your stairs in on either side, and maybe on the ends you'll have something like some signs to make it look like chairs, and pretty much what you'd do is you'd stagger them every other one. But that's something I'm already doing, where instead of using the stairs, I've actually gone with a slab method. And I like this because it almost creates a more detailed version of the chair, where you sort of get just a couple of extra shapes in there, but it also makes it so that you don't get such a sort of not deep style of chair, right? This actually looks a little bit more sit-inable, and you can even put minecarts in this to make them sit-inable, if that makes sense. And so I think what I'll go with is I'll stick with this method of benches, and you can tell me what you think about the stair method, but I think this will work for now. So I fitted in this small section here just to see how this is going to work out. You can see I've left 3 blocks in the middle because I think that will be an appropriate scale for the center aisle, but unfortunately that leaves us with just 2 block wide benches here. Now we do have 1 block left on the side, and this is what I'm thinking. It's a bit tricky because unfortunately with the design of bench that we've got right now, which I suppose you would also have this issue with the stairs, is that you cannot put the sign on the back as we have these details here on the sides, which I definitely want to keep. And so the only solution to this that I'm possibly considering is maybe placing in some stairs on the ends like this. Now, I think having it lopsided might look a little bit odd, so we could then try and do this. But then I'm concerned that it looks maybe a little bit vanilla, as in a more boring way, or maybe a little bit flat on this side, even if you still put the sign here. I'm not so sure about this. I think I'm going to leave this down to you. I may do a poll somewhere. If I do, I'll let you know. But just let me know what your thoughts are. Do you prefer this side, or do you prefer this kind of design? Okay, so I think this has turned out really well. Originally, I did continue the sort of curve that I had going along this side. However, once it had been converted from chairs to benches, I don't think it looked quite as good, and so I settled with full-size benches that go all the way along here like this. And you can see how it's looking with the center rails and things. I'm pretty happy with this. And so the next little idea I have here is, of course, I've placed down these torches just for the sake of building. But you can see it probably is a little bit too dark without them, and so my idea here is just to do some secret lighting underneath, and I'm hoping this isn't too bright. I may have to lower this a little bit. I'm just going to throw these on here and see. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to try put them a tiny bit lower and see if that helps. Okay, so what I actually went for there, as you just saw, was some candles. I was originally thinking just sink the glowstone down, but then I realised that would mess with the bottom of the schematic, and so I've gone with this, and I think this looks a lot nicer. It's just a little bit dimmer, and it doesn't look so much as if there's actually lights underneath here. And so I'm really happy with this bit now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to some more details, and I may even sort of revisit this and work on the floor and some other bits and things like that. So here's what I'm thinking. A few people in one of the previous videos mentioned that these towers, since they haven't really been fully furnished yet, should be used as a place for whoever works or lives in this area to have some kind of a living space, an office space for the priest, as you can imagine, stuff like that. And I think this is a pretty good idea, but we're really limited on space right now. I've already put the spiral staircase to one corner and created a ladder design here, but it just doesn't leave us with enough space. So my idea is to kind of re-tackle these towers, maybe switch up some of the heights of the floors and the methods for getting up and down, just to create some more room so that I can furnish it. So I'm going to do a little bit of work with that, and then I'll come back to you with what I've put together. So altogether, I ended up revamping the interiors for all of the different rooms in the entire facade section that I built in the very first part to this cathedral. And you'll notice that from the very start, the first thing I did in between the last clip you saw and this time lapse was I gutted all of the old temporary interior details that I had in here, as well as all of the interior walls and pretty much any block that wasn't visible from the inside, just to fully utilize the space that I had so that I could expand the interiors, which were already very small, to be as large as possible and just have more room to fit in a bunch of fun details, which we will take a tour of in a moment. So until then, enjoy the rest of this time lapse of the whole lot. Well, it's time at last to take one more tour of what's been built in today's video, as I'm happy to say that everything that we've made in this cathedral so far, except for the section we added on today, has had its interior revamped and updated to look better than ever. And we're actually going to be taking a look at what I just made in the towers there in a moment, as off camera I've also done a few more details in the hall section, as well as even a few of the ones in the section we made today. Now the first of those is these little wooden structures I've made around this entranceway. I really like these because it corners off certain sections, adds a bit of division between the different almost like rooms within this place, and I have seen similar things like this in churches myself. I'd love to get your opinion on it. I'm still not fully set on it, as it's not really based off any image that I found on the internet or anything. It's really just something I felt inspired to do, and I quite like it. Now another thing you'll notice as I'm walking past here is I did update the texture of the lectern to remove the books below so that it's the same on all sides, and that was just because some of those colours were getting really annoying and distracting. So that's one thing I did. I think that's just a nice tweak to have to my texture pack. But as I'm walking through here, you may spot a few new details, such as the chiseled stone bricks in between these archways, or the buttons along the top, or for example the little bits of polished andesite up there, or the updated coloured banners. Just for now, there's some more of the chiseled bookshelves, or the stone bricks, sorry. And finally there is one more big update that I made, which is those patterns in the flooring that I was talking about. So I did start off initially by placing the polished deep slate along the center aisle here, which I thought added some really nice division, but then it also inspired me to continue it into the pattern I had here and create a kind of a cross. And then I found a few more blocks that complemented the pattern to kind of expand it and make it even more beautiful. And then I even carried a similar design into these two side sections here, just to bring some more detail to this side as well. And in these bits, you can see I've added a few more details. So we've got a lectern and some candles here. I could even add more in the future. This is just what I've thrown together. And on this bit, I've even added a couple iron bars, as I quite like how almost gothic it looks. Now, whilst I'm here and looking upwards, you'll see that although it is hard to see, there is even some details up at the very top here, using cauldrons and hoppers. Since it's already dark, they blend in really nicely, but they just add a lot of nice shapes up there, which all adds to making this place look really, really detailed on the inside. Now there is one more thing I did, and that involves the organ up here. The organ itself I have left alone. However, during my process of gutting out all of the interior walls to create space, I discovered some space that I wanted to utilize, and that was in between the entranceway down in this section. And so what I've done is I've created a little bit of a secret room. Behind these doors on either end of this organ, you'll find a secret entrance into a hidden layer of almost some kind of Masonic temple that you can find inside this cathedral. And no doubt this is one day going to lead into an underground network of secret tunnels and secret organizations that are linked up in my world. And I've even created a building on my bridge that has some secret entrances like this, and I think it could be really fun and exciting to connect all of that up and have some kind of hidden Assassin's Creed underworld. And so I'm really excited for what this could lead to. As you can see down here, I've got two potential entrances that could go straight down into that world. And if you're wondering what the texture is up there, that's not custom. That is in fact the underside of daylight sensors, which is a fun little detail you can play with yourself. But now that I've shown off all of these details that are included in these bits, I think it's finally time that we take a look into the interiors of the towers. So towards the left, you'll find that the majority of the interior details are used for living quarters and the like, and towards the right, it mainly prioritizes storage and things like that. And so this is what we're going to take a look at first. This first room here is actually one of my favorites. Look how much more detailed this is than what we had before. And you can see that this is one of the largest rooms, as it's at the very bottom where we can go right up against these walls here, and it's revealed quite a bit of space. So as I say, this is mostly a storage room. You can see we've got some barrels here, maybe for the communal wine, and some more crates along the back, as well as another barrel here. I love this little design with the scaffolding, and you've even got a couple of barrels and buckets of water. And that's because what I've created here is a little well. You can in fact find some wells in the interiors of some old buildings, and I figured it would be really cool if this one was connected to some kind of an underground river or stream, which could be connected to the cave network and underground layers that we just spoke about earlier. So that's pretty cool. When I do that, I'll definitely finish this one off, and that could just be another way in combination with that one that this is connected to that side of things. And up here I've used a grindstone to create a little thing that could represent reeling in the chain to bring up the buckets of water and things like that. And that's just supported by a beam, and I've got the hopper lantern technique again to add some light. And yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to head on up the spiral staircase to get to the next floor. And as I'm doing this, you'll notice that throughout this entire tower, I did decide to this time continue the spiral staircase all the way up to the top, as I'm sure you would have spotted in the time lapse. And the reason I did this is because I knew that the ladders was just a little bit too unrealistic. Realistically, in a building of this scale, you wouldn't have ladders to get through major parts of the buildings, but rather a staircase. So although it used up a lot of room, I did decide to go with it, and I was able to add in some extra rooms by splitting off the space we have with an extra floor. So I think it's worthwhile, and I even created a slightly different method of designing it with the slabs that creates almost a skinnier looking staircase, so it does feel like you have more room in here even when it's here. And so anyways, this first room that we've walked on in here is one of these small rooms where we just have this small sort of L-shaped section of flooring which we can add details to. And on this one, I've just filled it with some filler sort of shelving unit to display some items and this sort of beam here. But some of the other ones do have a little bit more detail. What's nice about these ones though is they do connect up to this small room here, and this is the room that you'll find on either side of that organ we were taking a look at a moment ago. So this is a small sleeping chamber, and you can see I've got my custom painting clock up here, and then a couple beds and a few utilities that they would use, like a rack and some sort of table and bookshelves or drawers and things like that. But you'll notice the beds in here look a little bit odd. This is only a temporary change to my texture pack. I'm planning on adding in some custom beds, and I chose these. I just grabbed them from another resource pack because I really liked the way the frames of the beds were created here, but I still want to recreate these to my own liking where it looks more default, textures and things like that. But for now I just sort of have thrown these in here, so you can expect these to change. But we're going to head back on up now, and this takes us to the next floor, which I like to call the window room. And it's nighttime right now, which is really appropriate because in here we have all of my candles. So this has been turned into like a little candle room, maybe for a little bit of secret worshipping if you're not in the mood to go down there with everybody else. And up here I've got a painting of somebody who I imagine is quite important. They've got a little plaque, and you'll notice to one corner we have a little doorway into a balcony. So this overlooks the room where we were just before. I figured I could cut through this little wall here just to create a bit of fun space on the inside. And I've even got one of my little plants to the side, and I quite like this because it gives you a unique opportunity to see the window in a little bit more detail, whereas before it was difficult to really see it. Alright, so moving up one last time, you can see that towards the very top room, the staircase actually splits off here to enable us to get to the right height on this side, and this one is a simple barrel storage room, and this is actually at the very top where we have the walkway that takes us over to the other side. And you can see even in here I've added in a few more details with my new updated torches, as well as an armor stand just to add a bit of detail. And you'll see as well, if we head on up the very last bit of the staircase here, that I have sort of updated the way it comes up towards the very top with a little pillar of where the central pillar ends, using my skull as the last bit of detail, and just continuing it with a bit of handrails. I did leave this ladder in here as I thought it was a little bit more appropriate since it's not a main room, but rather just a bell room. Alright, well with that one out of the way, let's move on to the other side where we have some living chambers. So this first room here is basically an all-inclusive kitchen with your burner and a little bit of living space and a massive fireplace in here, even with some little display cabinet or something like this. And this could be a hat rack near the entrance. I've got another one of my clocks here, but I think the one thing in this room that really stands out is this beautiful fireplace. I've used my polished diorite here, which comes in all shapes and sizes, which enabled me to make this look really nice. If we just quickly jump over to this side of the tower once again, you can see that 3 of the walls are symmetrical, but there's this one side, which you can see a little bit clearly here, has a little bit of a kind of rounded shape to it, a little bit of an indent shape, which is the very thing that inspired me to place in a kind of roundish well here, and was also solely responsible for inspiring me to place in a fireplace here, as just behind that little gap there is in fact also a section where you can allow for the smoke to go up into a chimney. In fact, if we fly on up to the very top of the cathedral, you can in fact see where that chimney comes out. This is another little different design of chimney I've come up with, using one of my acacia trapdoors as a grate to allow the smoke to come through. And when it is smoking like this, I really do love it. This is a pretty fun detail to have up here, and it just makes you wonder what's going on the inside. So then of course we just have this little kitchen section here where you can do some cooking. I would imagine that you would cook in here or over the fire, as I haven't got an oven or anything like that, but I do have a little sink with a tap here, and this tool rack is another one of my custom paintings in my resource pack. And behind the log burner I just have a couple of, well, logs and bits of wood stored to the side to use for that or for the fire to keep that burning. So let's head on up the staircase and check out the next room. And actually while we do that, you can see that I've used my lightning rods yet again just to create some copper piping, as I'm sure all of those utilities down there would require something like that. So this room is a little bit more interesting than what we had on the other side. This is used as a place to store all kinds of different books and scrolls in bookshelves here, and you can even see on the very tops of them I've got some bits and bobs as well. And that is because just next door we have a room dedicated to writing and maintaining all of these kinds of documents. So you can see I've got some tables in here with all kinds of bits of paper, scrolls and books that they are addressing, with some chairs to do that. And I thought that this was actually a really fun idea. I really love this because it's really aesthetic. And yeah, what a great way to sort of use up this room compared to last time. And if we just quickly jump on up the staircase to the next floor, you can see that this one does in fact have another balcony as well, this time with a dead plant using the mangrove roots. And so it's symmetrical on this side. You can't quite see the window because this is in the way, but hey, at least it looks good. So up here we have another basic interior with, as opposed to a themed room, something like below, this is just filled with some temporary details. So we've got things like a table and a plant and a shelving unit, something simple like that. The one unique thing about this room is the painting up here, and I've given it, albeit a slightly oversized but nonetheless very cool looking picture frame. And this one's quite special because if we actually jump on through here, you'll notice this is a secret painting. And in my resource pack, I have it so that the backs of paintings don't have a texture, so that I can do the clock details and the other stuff that you've seen. And so from in here, it actually creates a very unique, hidden, almost one-way window, which is a kind of a fun thing about my resource pack. But you can see this is the top of the chimney, and so you could use this as a secret way to jump down and break your legs, but I just thought it was a fun thing to do. So let's climb all the way up these staircases to the final room that I did here, and this one is another simple one with just a small bookshelf and some more interior details to create, a little bit of interest in this very, very small room here. And finally, I just mentioned my lightning rods for those copper pipes I had below, which reminded me on the very top of this section of the cathedral, you can see I replaced the fence posts, which were basically these ones that I used here, for the lightning rod, which just creates a little bit more detail and was actually the very reason I changed the texture to this, as I was intending on using them for things like this, and I've only just got around to actually using it the way I intended. So that's pretty cool, even more details on the very top of the tower, but other than that, that is every single thing that I've added so far. And let's not forget, we've even got this enormous section on this side, which we added in today's video as well. Another small detail which I forgot to pick up on was I replaced the spruce planks in this doorway for my crates, which almost look exactly the same, except they do have the line going through them, which I thought was another fun, very small way of adding just an extra little bit of detail to this cathedral. So that just about wraps up all of the things that I've got time for in today's video. I'm now really happy with the direction all of this is going in, and it means that we're left with just one section to finish off this enormous project, which I'm really looking forward to doing. It means that we can put on the end of all of these exterior details and revisit the section that I made in today's video with some more awesome interior details to put into that roof section that we have at the very top. So I'm going to get to work on building that, and I will see you once that's finished.